Hello, Agenda Woman Tribe, and welcome to another episode of the Agenda Woman podcast. I'm really excited today to be focusing on a conversation that I'm really passionate about around our Living Well segment, and we'll be in conversation around health and well-being. I'm excited to be joined by an esteemed panel of guests. First up will be Marcia Eugenio, head of Momentum Multiply. My second guest is Nicci Robertson, who's the owner of Reinvent Health, also specializing as a nutritionist. And my last guest is going to be Dr. Kirti Ranchod, who is a neurologist. In 2007, Arianna Huffington, who was then the co-founder of the Huffington Post, after pursuing success relentlessly over many years, collapsed. She hit her head on her desk and she broke her cheekbone. This particular incident made Arianna rethink her pursuit of money and success because she realized the detriment that it now had on her well-being. The third matric of success, introduced by Arianna in her book Thrive, redefines success beyond power and money, offering a more balanced approach to success, which still includes your pursuit in the financial realm, but also prioritizes health as well as mindfulness. Ladies, I'm really excited to have you in the podcast today. My first question to everyone is, when in your own lives did you first encounter the importance of the third matrix of success? Marcia, I'll start with you.
Well, for me, it happened probably 15 years ago. Being an A-type personality, I still am. It's not that difficult to have the foot flat on the pedal, burning the candle on both ends. And you feel invincible when you're younger, and you don't really think about the consequences and how this spills into other areas of your life. I was in a startup business and determined to make it work. I think for any of the women that are listening today, if you are in a startup business and a mother and a partner and have a household and having to wear so many different hats, you understand the pressures that I'm talking about. And it got to a point where I was no longer having fun. I was pretty much in survival mode, just making sure that the business was successful. And we made our sales targets, and I took my team to Mauritius as an incentive. And on the first day that we landed, because now I've been pumping this adrenaline for weeks and actually months and years, but we land in Mauritius, so now my guard is down, the adrenaline isn't pumping, cortisol seeking, and my immune system's in serious trouble, and started finding issues with my eyes. Couldn't see, had stabbing pains in my eye, had to end up coming back to South Africa only to be diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And what followed after that was 9 months of really not being able to function at all, which resulted in selling the business eventually. But it really made me reflect on what's important. Is this really worth it? Am I really enjoying life? Am I enjoying a good quality of life? And I wasn't even 35, and I was on all these major drugs. And, I had that epiphany. Fortunately, I had the wisdom of, people that care about me, that were able to be honest with me and give me some guidance. And I decided to do quite an extreme intervention, being an A-type personality. So did a whole sort of year of being vegan and yoga, and took some sabbatical. And that was really, really extreme. But it really worked for me. I was able to heal my body and take the time to heal my mind and just relax. But I made a decision on that day that I wouldn't let it get to this point. And that's really what it was about. And actually that really got me on this journey to wellness. I think it informs a lot of, what we're doing today at Momentum Multiply, but it's been a journey of 20 years, and it continues to be a journey of always just checking in to see, how close am I to that red flag? Yeah. And giving myself permission to slow down the pace. That's the easiest way to deal with stress, is slow the pace down.
Marcia, I'm so glad that your moment came even before you came into the corporate working environment, because we know as female founders how daunting the journey is. And often we're told you need to go hard. You have to be the 5 a.m. club. You have to sleep at 1 a.m. But the fact of the matter is there are consequences. And I also like what you said around being in survival mode. How often do we realize looking back that we were actually in survival mode and we were never really equipped or know how to live in a state of thriving? Nicci, what was your experience? When was your first encounter with the third matric of success?
So yeah, I'd say it was also early 20s. I'd been working in the advertising industry. I owned my own agency. I loved it, but I was completely burnt out. I had no locus of self, so I didn't know how to look after myself. So yeah, long nights, early mornings, lots of exercise, but I always battled with weight. So I could put on weight or lose weight really quickly, but I did it very unhealthily, like many women. And it was all about looking good. It was all for the aesthetic and nothing to do with health. And I ended up getting also autoimmune issues. I got really, really sick. And I found a doctor who I'd say bullied into giving me answers. And I sat across the table from him one day and I said, I know you know the magic bullet. And, there's a secret blood test out there, or is a magic pill that you're not giving me. And he said to me, I'll give you anything you want. Here's my script pad. He said, but until you change your mind, nothing's going to change.
Wow.
And that didn't inspire me. It made me angry. And I thought, I'm going to go prove him wrong, because that's how I'm wired. And within 12 weeks, I had given up. I'd given up my agency. I'd walked out because it had become too much. And I just had to go hunt down the answer or die trying. And I went and I started studying nutrition. I actually started studying dietetics, and I realized quite early on into dietetics that this was not what I was looking for. I dieted my whole life and it never worked. So going and studying a methodology that I knew not to work was pointless. I found a nutrition degree and then went into functional nutrition, and it became a calling. So I had an opportunity to work at some companies and help people change their lives. What ended up happening was I lost, 20% of my body fat in 12 weeks healthily.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And all through eating well, and change the frame from, eat food as punishment, food for, because it's a way we control things, to food as nurturing. And I learned the power of healing through food that way. And the rest is history. I've been working in this industry now for 30 years, and it's just such an honor. And I'm so grateful to be able to help people help themselves.
Yeah. I love the recurring theme of A-type personalities because that is another myth we need to debunk. The idea that when you're an A-type personality who often excels, you really have all the answers. And if you're a person that is potentially maybe finding themselves not succeeding, it's because you don't have an A-type personality. So I really love that, because I saw it also in myself. I'm also A-type. And in my 20s, I was a crazy person. And when I came into my 30s, I had to ask myself the question, at what price?
Yes.
At what price am I going to have this obsessive pursuit of power and money? And what is the cost? Dr. Kirti, I'm interested to hear your story.
It's very interesting how it's aligned and how it shapes what we do. So it's really interesting listening to the stories. Mine was from a different perspective, actually. It was from the perspective of being a doctor. And what happened in my practice is I was seeing probably up to 60% of people with stress-related problems. So the stress having caused neurological problems, chronic headaches, and more serious issues. And recognizing that the point at which people are seeing me is a little bit late, actually, right? Not late, you would want to intervene slightly earlier. You would want to give them strategies to stop this from becoming a problem where you needed a neurologist, in a sense. In addition, the other percentage had significant neurological illnesses that needed support that wasn't only medication. So how do you support recovery that requires more than just a tablet? And I would give advice. I would sit and I would talk to my patients, and mostly people could not listen to the advice that I was given. Even if they understood it and even if it made sense, it was just not practical enough. Yeah. So that inspired what I'm doing. So it was about how to take what we actually know that supports health in different ways and makes it exceptionally practical that people can use so that we can potentially reduce risk or reduce severity going forward. But it is challenging to get people to adopt this still. Yeah.
I like the point that you anchored around how our experiences have almost given birth to what it is that we do today. Marcia, you now find yourself at this privileged position, I believe, because to do the kind of work that transforms lives is to do the kind of work that transforms communities. And I think when you think about the socioeconomic impact of women being well and how it not only affects the person that is well, but how they engage with the entire tribe and community, you are really doing impactful work, if I need to just pinpoint that. I wanted to share a little bit about Momentum Multiply and what gave birth to this concept and what really it is that the platform is doing to help women live well.
That's an interesting question because you spot on. I think the work that we're doing in Multiply today is a culmination of all these learnings. So I think the important thing is we want to empower people to live the best version of themselves. And unfortunately, often it is that silver bullet that motivates the change, and it's quite painful. And that's probably why you found, people weren't listening, because you need that silver bullet, right? There's no great motivation like pain. However, what we have found is that even awareness can be very powerful.
True.
And it's awareness of the right sort of behaviors or the way that I think or the choices that I make, and being able to connect that with what I'm feeling, the energy that I'm feeling, and how it's playing out in my relationships, how it's playing out in my day-to-day life. When people are able to relate and make that connection, that awareness in itself actually triggers change. So for some people, it's like extreme change. And for others, it's just those small daily habits, because when they start experiencing, the benefits of changing or adopting those new habits, when they feel the energy, that becomes the motivation to keep going. So Momentum Multiply is really trying to create the awareness. We use incentives as an extrinsic motivator to get you engaged and to start taking accountability for your health, because that's the psychology of change. It's that reward. Sometimes it's the reward, the psychology of like, yes, I've done well, I've got that badge. And sometimes it's about benchmarking yourself comparing yourself against other women. It's like, but how does this woman just, how does she build her resilience, And I'm just reflecting on Ariana and the reality, I bet you, that she probably still faces those challenges on a day-to-day basis.
True.
So that's actually what we're trying to create, is not this once-off awareness. It's through gamification, through technology, through these tools, and incentivizing you to engage with them. Through that, you create awareness. So I'm going to give you one short example. We've moved away from loyalty. We don't want to reward people because you're loyal to our product. We want to use our investment in really investing in people's health and helping them become that best version of themselves. So that's what we spend our incentives on. It's healthy choices and health status.
I love that.
And one of the gamifications we introduced, like people that were used to our previous product were very upset about that, because now I've got to work and I've got to get up so early in the morning and I need to measure and see how recovered I am to face challenges for the day. But the fascinating thing now is, because they're doing it every day, they're now like, hang on, why am I not getting a good score? And that's creating the engagement. It's getting them to ask the right questions. And some of the feedback I've started receiving is, I wasn't aware. I didn't know that was happening. So it's the power of gamification. It's the power of how you can use technology to create that awareness. And that's what we're trying to do at Momentum Multiply, is to empower people to make those best choices. So we need to use a couple of nudges and incentives to do that. But we know from experience that when your energy goes up and you feel the benefits of that, we know that creates change.
I think one of the biggest insights that has only come with age is the understanding that change takes time. And you have to engage in the process of changing. It's not going to be a once-off experience and then suddenly you're transformed. Yeah. But it's all those small things that you do. And to have a reward system is empowering. I would love that in some of the changes I'm trying to make. But I really always try to anchor that idea of embracing process and staying the course. Nicci, in your title and your work as a wellness coach, particularly for executives and nutritionists, I'm curious about the food piece that you already shared with us and how our nutrition and diets can really start to shift the state of our mental health. If you could share a little bit about that, because I'm really trying to get better at food and it's always hard.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be definitely taking notes. But I'm very curious to hear how even just something as simple as the food, how can it change the state of our mental health? Because I'm trying to get games over this. I'm trying to get points over this.
So women's needs and men's needs are vastly different. And I think we've really got to embrace that. Women need to eat differently to men. And as women, we are susceptible to following fads. So we see something out on social media. We see somebody who looks really good in their gym clothes. We want to know what they've done.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, it's nonsense stories. They look good anyway. They didn't have to follow any fad. They've been paid to say, something. And we experiment and we try all sorts and kinds of things that usually involve deprivation. Now, this isn't good for our hormones. It is not good for our brain. It's not good for our moods. And it's not good for anyone around us.
Please repeat that. It is absolutely not good for our hormones. And I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
The going up and down and all the changes that we're constantly making.
Exactly. So we usually starve ourselves and then have a desperate need for something sweet, which puts our hormones into disarray. So it pushes up insulin, which is a hormone, and that affects our estrogen, our progesterone. It does the same in men, but it works very differently in women. And we end up on this cycle of putting on weight, hating ourselves, trying every fad, taking fat burners. And at the end of the day, you end up fat loss resistant. So most women get to a point where they just can't lose weight or they can't put on weight. Some people battle to put on weight, but more than anything, they end up ill. So the immune system takes a hit. We end up with aches and pains, brain fog, and this all comes down to what we're eating, when we're eating, and more importantly, the quality of the food, where our food came from. So we depend a lot on restaurants and shops to feed us, but we don't know what's in there. And because we've engineered such busy lives where we have to work and raise families and look after our homes, who's got time to cook? But this is one of the most important factors, is food is nurture. And if we're not nurturing ourselves and our families by creating amazing food and sort of putting our minds and a sense of gratitude into what we're creating and putting into our bodies, things are going to go wrong. And you might listen to this and go, well, how do I even start? I'm so busy. There are ways. There are ways. And you don't have to get it right all the time. That's the secret, is just because you decide to do this, you can't do it right all the time. If you get it 20% right, you will feel the benefit. But it's, again, learning what works for you, learning what you need in this given time. That might be different tomorrow. So there's quite a science and a psychology around what we eat and the reverence we give to the food that we put into our bodies. And you will feel a difference really quickly if you do it right.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue to my question to you, Dr. Kirti, around, the science and the psychology of potentially food. There's also the looming challenge of chronic stress. And we have to call it chronic stress because there's stress, then there's chronic stress, which is just consistent. When you look at your work and the people that are coming to see you, what are you seeing as some of the earlier signs that can move you from stress to chronic stress? That's the first question. And the second question is, what strategies can we put in place as working women to potentially not get to the chronic stress piece? Because I can't imagine what that looks like when you have to start to resolve that without potentially even getting on medication.
I think what happens principally is that because people ignore so much of what stress is doing to them, it presents first with physical symptoms, as I think both of you described. And so subtle symptoms would be headache, problems with digesting food or how you're absorbing food or eating, your digestive system changes, changes in your skin conditions. So very often it's physical symptoms that you want a tablet for, basically. And if you actually look beyond that, you'll understand, well, perhaps my diet wasn't good for a month, because it has a huge impact in terms of how you manage stress. So poor diet contributes to the impact of stress on you and how you cope with your stresses. And so you get into this vicious cycle. So if you start looking at what what happened before you actually got your physical symptoms. Was it a particular stressful period? Because it was a particularly stressful period, did you change specific habits like your sleep, your eating, your exercise, etc., that then all contributed to this physical symptom? And then that gives you the clue that it is stress that is the problem and that you need to have effective solutions going forward.
You know, one of the game changers for me has been sleep. I can tell you, yesterday I had a horrible day because the night before I had a glass of bubbly very late, and then I struggled to sleep, which is something that I think is me, right? Because that's another thing. Better understanding what it is that affects you. I want you to share a little bit, Dr. Kirti, around how you've seen particularly sleep being a contributor to some of the challenges that we face when we think about productivity, although it's not the place where we want to really encourage people to get to. So we're not saying live well so you can be productive, but even in just our ability to navigate simple challenges. I couldn't finish a sentence yesterday because I was exhausted. But yesterday I decided to then sleep early because I knew I had this big conversation I needed to host, and it completely transformed just the way I engaged with the day from when I opened my eyes. When you think about the research that's been done, particularly around sleep, what kind of advice could you give women who are listening in around why they should be prioritizing that as well?
First, I think sleep does change according to where we are in our lives and what we're doing and how we manage it. So I do think we manage potentially better when we're younger in terms of certain aspects of sleep deprivation. But what sleep does is it allows your brain and your body to rest in a sense. And there's specific physiological processes that happen in the brain that are absolutely essential for the way our brain functions. And so without it, your brain doesn't have... It's not just recovery, it's not just reset, it's essential to the process of the way your brain functions. And we come back to what you said, to actually be productive, you do need to sleep. So if productivity is really what you're worried about, you need to sleep. The two are linked. And so that's the essence of it. And I go back to how I started. So I would tell people, you need to sleep well. It's not enough, right? If I tell you to sleep well, do you know what to do?
Sleep well means
what it is. What are the activities that you need to actually sleep well? When is the last time of the day that you should have caffeine, if you should have it at all, depending on how it's impacting your sleep, and alcohol. And so it's specific habits that change the way you sleep.
Marcia, because I'm competitive, so I'm already thinking about how many points I can get and how many rewards I can get on Momentum Multiply. I would like for you to share a little bit about the core pillars that Multiply looks at and encourages, and how you came to those core pillars, as well as how the rewards are structured around those pillars. I know sleep is one of them. I'm very big on the sleep thing because I've seen the physical impact that it has on me. I'm still getting better at nutrition, but sleep, I think I kind of am sold on that one.
No, while Dr. Kirti was chatting, I was like itching at the bit to comment because my sort of journey when I had that moment was to focus on what I'm eating. So it was like, would you feed your body like, or would you feed your fancy car beer, or would you give it like good quality fuel, for instance? Nothing wrong with beer or bubbly. I do have that from time to time.
Yes.
But it's just, the quality of fuel you put in this vehicle will determine how your body functions. Because if what you're putting in is creating a stress response, that is an impact on your sympathetic nervous system. So very practically, it's like you're putting your foot flat on the pedal. Okay, so you actually go into survival mode. And in that moment, even unconsciously, you're using up a lot of energy to actually just metabolize that food. So diet was quite important. Movement helps us, release some of those stress hormones.
I've gotten better at that one as well.
Physical activity, but there's also overtraining is not good.
Yes.
So it's about that sweet spot, especially if you're an A-type personality. Yes. You're already doing everything so
I'm not
aggressively.
even going to tell you what I do now. So
you definitely don't want to go and do kickboxing after a stressful day. What you need is probably yoga and some, body weight trainings. So it's understanding what's important and what's valuable to you. But the bit about sleep, I just want to say that what changed my life was technology called heart rate variability, which we use in our program. And it creates awareness of how much energy are you burning, where are you burning this energy, and how much recovery are you getting. Now, one of the reasons why sleep is so beneficial is because that handbrake goes up.
Yeah.
And it's your parasympathetic.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, your handbrake goes up, but you can also sleep and the handbrake's not up.
Yeah.
So if you have a bubbly before you go to sleep, you're actually making the body work, right?
True.
So the sleep hygiene is really important, but it's in how we eat. It's the quality of sleep we get. There's nothing wrong with stress. It's about understanding how to manage that stress and have strategies in place. The other one is connection. So I think typically in all sort of wellness programs, it's always about nutrition and diet and manage your stress. But the quality of our relationships and the extent to which we feel supported and feel like we're part of a community and that we can seek guidance and advice when we need it, it's a real thing. You know, when people feel unsupported or they feel lonely or they feel like they're not part of a community, there's no greater stressor on your nervous system and your immune system like that. Loneliness is a massive thing, and it's not an old people's problem. It can even be for a successful woman. When you're carrying that load, it can be a very lonely place.
Absolutely.
So connection is a key pillar that we are also trying to create focus. It's not just about the physical part.
I love that. Nicci, we spoke a little bit about, Dr. Kirti mentioned it and put it so well when she said, when I tell someone, for instance, that you need to get better at your sleep or you need to sleep well, how do you define that for that person and how do you make sure that they walk away and they actually do that, which I love that, the program does have that element of encouraging sleeping well. I often think about nutrition because this is an area where I'm not so great. So I'm getting pointers for myself. When you think about just the basics of good nutrition for someone who's listening, simple changes that they can make today in identifying what is not great for them that we're finding in a lot of our plates and our planning and the choices we're making around nutrition, and what could be the low-hanging fruit. Just a simple change. It could be a breakfast change. It could be a planning change. It could be anything because I'm not well-versed, but I'm just trying to get better so I can get more points here.
So to keep it really simple, what I like to tell people is not to leave out any major food group. Don't leave out carbs, we need them. Definitely don't leave out protein, we definitely need that. And we need fats as well. And we need hydration. So we need everything all the time, right through the day. Fasting doesn't work for everybody. In fact, it works really badly for most women. And This is the fad, yeah. And we are seeing years since, since COVID, fasting has become quite a popular way of people getting around not eating or avoiding food. And we're seeing some dire consequences as a result in men and women, mostly in women, because our hormones dictate that we need to be fed and quite often during the day. So if I can give you any piece of advice that I think will stand you in good stead is make sure that you're getting protein in the morning. In fact, the first thing that passes your lips should be protein. It regulates your blood sugar, gets your brain working, balances your adrenal system. So if the first thing you're having is your cup of coffee in the morning, you're pushing your adrenals to work way too hard and you're high revving that pedal. So protein first.
That was the best advice she gave me, actually quite recently.
It works like a charm.
I'm definitely the girl with first thing in the morning is a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, no milk.
So you're going from 0 to hero really fast and you're going to crash by 11 o'clock.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that sounds a little bit familiar.
Goodness. I need to really get better at my nutrition. Marcia, we've heard about sleep, we've heard about nutrition. I want to better understand, once I have all this information, how am I engaging with the program? What does it look like? I know you have questionnaires, I know you have surveys that you put in there. What is my experience in the program and how am I engaging with the rewards? How am I seeing change? How am I measuring change? What does it all look like? What does the sphere look like of the program? Just for anyone who's like, I have to get involved and figure out how to solve my problems. This is a confession.
Well, we're really trying to make it easy. So it all begins with knowing your health. And we create awareness. There's a small questionnaire, and we want to ask you about how you're eating, how you're sleeping. Mostly because we want you to have awareness about how am I eating,
True.
how am I sleeping. So even if you know that, it's still like, it's that moment of being mindful that this is how I do it. That's what mindfulness is. You're being mindful of the choices you're making. We use technology to measure sort of the hard numbers, what does your blood pressure look like? So you look at the camera of your smartphone, and using very sophisticated technology, you do a 90-second scan, and we're able to tell you what your risk is. You're doing super healthy, or there's some red flags you need to consider. And so that awareness piece is a massive part of how we want you to get started on the journey. In fact, we try to get as many people to do that as possible, because that in itself already creates change.
Yeah.
After that, we have a digital coach tool. So you can, if you want to improve your sleep, you opt into the sleep cards, and every day you'll get a little snippet, bite size. Here's a tip that you can focus, very practical, that you can focus on for today. And you can do that every day. We know we're so overwhelmed with information, so it's like bite size. But then using wearable technology and your phone, you're able to measure your activity during the day, and you're also able to measure your resilience. So how well are you managing your stress, and how much recovery have you got through sleeping? So that's part of how we get people to improve their health through a bit of gamification on the phone. And then, of course, we want to create that aspirational value around, making these healthy choices. So you get those instant rewards, no points. There's no hoops you need to, jump through. It goes into a Health Saver account, and you can use that balance to pay for your out-of-pocket medical expenses. You can even use it
that's such a great idea.
Pay towards your medical aid contributions. But we also allow members to invest that balance into their wellness. So we've got an ecosystem of partners, and we allow you to spend your earnings or your rewards at those partners. And so in that way, you're reinvesting in your health, because we're making it more affordable and more accessible. And by the way, like, travel is a big benefit there, because we want people to travel.
Yeah.
We want them to take time out. So all our sort of ecosystem of partners are well thought through, so that we support the eat, sleep, move, breathe, connect. Habits.
I love
every
it.
day.
I love it.
And it's that simple.
Yeah. Dr. Kirti, for a young woman who's watching this, who's thinking, it's not happening to me right now. I can go on like a drinking binge for the whole weekend, wake up on Monday, get to work and get pumping and get things happening. What kind of insights can you share with us around the importance of thinking through really being mindful around how we engage with ourselves, and the impact on brain development when we don't start focusing and being mindful around how we eat, how we sleep, how we move, and how we connect, the effects on brain development, and what's happening when we're in our 20s and thinking nothing can conquer us and we can do everything in the world?
So my focus in neurology is on brain health, how to keep the brain healthy, for several reasons. The one, to reduce specific illness. And the second one is how to actually optimize brain function. So how do we actually get the brain to do what we want it to do, in a sense? And part of that approach is actually looking at a life course approach to brain health. What do you have to do as a child, as an adolescent, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, as you get older? And so all our experiences are going to have an impact on our brain and on us and our success. So yes, there is room to actually play and have fun. It's about the extent, it's about the frequency, it's about how much, and about making sure you give yourself the time to recover, so that you can actually reduce the impact of that. So alcohol and drugs are toxins. This is the reality of it. The more you have, the more vulnerable your brain becomes. And for certain people, that level is lower than other people in terms of vulnerability. So it's important to understand your vulnerability. And I will mention cannabis or weed as well, because there's this concept that it's not harmful. It is potentially harmful. And so you have to also decide where your limit is, how much and how frequent, because there's this misconception that you can have as much as you want, as frequently as you want, and it has no consequence on your brain. with alcohol, with cannabis, with other drugs, you know it's changing your brain. It's why you're taking it. You're using it because it's changing the way you function, which means it's definitively having an impact on your brain, which means there's also a side effect. And so you have to decide how much and where your limit is to prevent the potential long-term problems.
Today, I feel like I'm just being dragged.
Sorry.
But listen, I'm going to be so much better for it. Nicci, staying into the same topic, the effect on cognitive function when it comes to food and how we need to better understand the impact of what we ingest on our brain development and just normal cognitive function.
Yeah, so if we're eating junk food and takeouts and lots of sugar, those are inflammatory foods and they affect our brains. They affect every part of our bodies. They affect our hormone expression. And when we're eating whole foods, real foods, foods as nature intended or recognizable in nature, so meat, fish, chicken, fruit and vegetables, those are anti-inflammatory for the most part. And they have a cooling effect on the system. So they enhance brain function, especially things like healthy fats. So if you're wanting that, there's so many foods that actually enhance our brain's ability to function and detoxify. So yeah, it's so simple to say, stay away from junk food, eat real food, but the magic or the key comes in, how are you going to do that? If all your life you've just gone to, the takeout down the road for dinner because you haven't had time to prep and prepare, and you just, cooking pasta for the family with whatever you can find in a tin, it's going to be a challenge the thing is, how's your pain threshold? Where is it making meaning for you? And I think, when it comes to, because we can't feel our brains and there's no pain when we are having an issue like talking to brain health, but we do experience things like brain fog and confusion and being unable to put our thoughts together. And for many people, it's a worry. We always think, well, cognitive decline, but very often it's sleep, it's timing of feeding. It's when you have that coffee and how late in the day you're having that coffee. It's alcohol plays a huge role when it comes to cognitive issues. But yeah, food plays a massive role. We don't put it there. We think food is just about weight, or it's just about energy, or it's just about enabling me to go for a run or recover, or it's just about pleasure. But it very much impacts the brain.
There's something that you said which I just want to kind of get into a little bit because it's just interesting. You said uninflammatory, is that the term? Food cools our bodies.
Yes.
Please explain.
Okay.
Because I think I kind of get it. And I feel like it was a aha moment for me, just understanding, the dynamics of what happens in my body when I ingest either food that gives me high inflammation. Because of also medication, the amount of medication we take for inflammation.
Exactly.
And the impact of that on our bodies as well. So if you can just elaborate a little bit more on those two parts.
Yeah, and I think it asks us to be more interoceptive, which means you become conscious of what happens inside your body when you eat certain things. And many people aren't aware of what they're feeling. They're just eating. And very often people will eat and they'll just pop a Gaviscon because whenever I eat, I get this burning and I feel uncomfortable. And people suffer with back pain and joint pain and they don't realize it's really got a lot to do with the quality or lack of quality in the foods that we're eating. And then you go, per chance, and you go to a friend's house and they're cooking from scratch. And whatever you eat feels so good to your body. Your body calms down, you tangibly feel it. And you don't wake up the next day with a tummy ache or a hangover. But if you start paying attention to how food feels, when you're eating, not just is it giving you IBS, but is it calming you down? Is it making you feel satiated? Those are keys as to whether food is working for you or working against you. And you'll almost never find that if it's a factory-produced takeout type of thing.
Absolutely. I think one of the most powerful things that you said, Marcia, at the beginning of the conversation is the power of awareness. Because even as you chat about that, I realized that for the longest time I was having full cream milk, for instance. And for me, it was just like, it tastes good. I know every time I have a cappuccino, I feel bloated and I feel miserable. And over time, it goes away. I just thought that's the effect of cappuccino on everyone until I came across the concept of being lactose intolerant. And it has been game changing because now when I eat and I think about the fact that, there's going to be something that happens if I ingest maybe yogurt and any of that, then I can make a conscious decision around which which one I go for. I promise you, for many years in my life, my mornings were miserable because I was taking cappuccino with full cream milk, and then I would either have a runny tummy or I'd feel bloated, and I'll be miserable the first couple of hours in the day. But Marcia, the way you explained just the power of awareness was so transformative in how I think about even the work that we do and the information that we share. I want you to share a little bit about how the app or the program helps with some aspects of self-monitoring, right? Because once I know that this is what I should not be touching and that's what I'm touching, how does the app help me better engage with that knowledge across the pillars and just making sure that I have consistent information, and when I have questions, there's a way that I can get the answers as well?
So the app is a tool, and what we're trying to use in the tool are resources. So there is a lot of health tracking, and we use the well-known health tracking, which is how much activity you're doing every day and how much recovery are you getting every day. So that in itself creates a lot of questions around, why have I not recovered? Did I eat late last night? All those sort of habits that we've spoken about now. So those are sort of the tracking. In terms of setting goals across eat, sleep, move, breathe, connect, that's not what we do. It's really just using the data that's typically collected through wearables and translating the data in a way that you can understand so that you're asking yourself the right questions. So the resources that we provide is really to try and address those questions. And I don't want to let too much out, but there are very exciting tools that are coming out. That
you can give us a special.
On demand.
I feel like you can literally just on the Agenda Woman podcast, this way I spoke about it for the first time. Okay, we're not going to pressure you.
But on demand, we have some very exciting tools that allows you to engage immediately, 24/7, to get some questions answered. So we're very excited about that. I want to connect just the cognitive question to you, because it was a big aha moment.
It was
for me, because succeeding and that ambition still drives me. And without it, I get bored. So I like the challenge. I like creating.
Yes.
And I like creating opportunities for others and empowering others. Now, the big thing around the cognitive thing that got me to think about it differently is a neuroscientist in the UK. I listened to one of his talks to a bunch of very successful corporate people. And he said, well, you're actually all not being very creative. You've got all these major challenges, all these dynamics that you're having to contend with, but you're actually using the part of your brain that's responsible for survival. And you can't problem solve. You can't think about challenges differently because the priority is survival. So if you're activating the stress response, guess which part of your brain is going to be functioning? You're going to resolve challenges based on what you know, but you have this cognitive bias because you're protecting yourself, because there's a threat. Like your body doesn't know that actually you're not really a threat, or your brain.
Yes.
But because you're activating that stress response, it thinks you are.
Yeah.
So that's how clever the brain is, and we can completely train it. But that really, really helped me. It's those types of knowledge bits and pieces that we want to share, that actually if I want to be successful in the role, I should use parts of my brain that are actually going to help me be successful by not trying to be predictable around what's already happened, but in a very high-paced, challenging world that we live in, is calling for a different quality of creativity, which you can only do, by the way, with your frontal lobes.
Yeah.
Am I correct, Kirti? So that's the part of your brain that you want to activate. So if you're stressed and you're not eating well and you're not sleeping well, guess which part of your brain switched on? And that really helped me connect what that meant and the role that I have to play in the way that I live my life daily. When I'm stressed, that question often comes up, and it's the questioning that we want to ask is like who are you now?
Yeah.
Are you actually showing up?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I think there's something so powerful around context, right? Where you have the information in bits and pieces, but the minute that it's put together, you're just like, that makes so much sense. And I get that because when I learned transcendental meditation, one of the key results that would come from being able to just slow down your mind, disconnect from work, and the consistent problem solving is the ability to be creative. And when you can access that, then you can be innovative. And I also have a big thing around survival and thriving. And I know I'm running out of time, but I have to ask now that I've remembered. Dr. Kirti, when you think about the brain function, and what it looks like when we're in survival mode, which I think a lot of women are consistently in, and what it looks like when we're in the mode where we're thriving. I literally said when I came, I just turned 40, and one of the things I said is, in this era of my life, I want to understand how to thrive, because I knew it was not going to be something that comes naturally, but it's something that I have to be intentional about, because we spend so much of our time, particularly as women, in survival mode. If you could share what you have seen around the impacts of brain function when we're in survival mode and when we are thriving. And thank you so much for bringing that to this conversation, because I think it's going to be helpful.
Yeah, I think you've actually described it really well. So the brain is functioning really well when we're super stressed, but it's functioning really well to help us to solve for the stressor, whether that's real or whether that's imagined, right? Whether it's local, whether it's global, whether it's something we read in the news or heard in the story. And so all our energy from the brain and our brain processes are theoretically trying to solve for that problem and not for the problem that we have at hand, right? So whether that is a task we have to complete or to be creative at solving a specific challenge or to actually maximize an opportunity, what's happening is that we're limiting ourselves on a very subconscious level because our brain is hardwired for stress, necessarily so. We need to protect ourselves. We need to respond to threat. We need to respond to disaster. So it's a very necessary circuitry in the brain. But because of the way our lives are currently constructed in terms of all these multiple stresses, and I emphasize real and imagined, what happens is that we are not efficient at doing what we need to live the lives that we want to, right? And so we have to be very, very conscious about then incorporating these different activities or experiences to actually develop the neural circuitry for calm, like meditation or mindfulness, which then also helps us to sleep better, like making conscious choices about what we eat, which then also develops that neural circuitry. So developing the ecosystem to help that neural circuitry develop is important. So it's not about a magic switch or a magic pill again. It's about what experiences you choose to support that neural circuitry for calm, like meditation or mindfulness. It's about what are the habits around it that help that neural circuitry for calm, like diet, like sleep, like exercise. So that's the way to start thinking about it. And that then shifts the way your brain functions and how you respond to both challenges and opportunities.
Okay, I have my tools now.
Yes.
So the idea, I guess, is not so much to really think about how to thrive, but to actually make the changes in my day-to-day life that then transform my brain and helps me get into that way of living. So there isn't a toolbox. In actual fact, it's the entire behavioral change that changes the way that I then engage with the world. My final question to all of you ladies, this has been amazing, and I could go on and on. I feel like I just asked like 5% of the questions that I would want to ask, because I, in my personal capacity, long for continuous growth when it comes to my well-being. I've understood through past experience that there is no other way to exist at the fullness of our capacity unless we prioritize well-being. And in saying that, my question is around mindfulness for each one of you in each of your, in the industries where you function. When we think about mindfulness, I think sometimes the myth is that it's one act, but I feel like it's a lifestyle. It's going into every day, being, and another thing that's helped me is slowing down, right? I always find that when I slow down, I make better decisions. And I think mindfulness for me has come from sometimes when things feel like I need to rush, I need to actually slow down and I see things clearer. In each of your fields, what kind of advice would you give someone listening? And for you, Marcia, I want you to make it about really the corporate working space, because it's going to be practical. You're there every day. You understand the challenges. How have you engaged mindfulness as a practice that you interface with on a daily basis and seen it work for you in how you work? And the same with nutrition, mindfulness around that, and in the way that our brain develops and how we function, and the impact of being mindful and how that can be transformative.
So because let me slow down. Because this is it's a daily choice. Presence is something I haven't got right. And it, through meditation and through all the practices, it's so easy to get lost in the past and worry about the future. And that doesn't power the now.
Yeah.
And the now is all you have.
It is.
So corporate is a great place to practice that, isn't it?
I agree with you, by the way. I'm going to pause there, because a lot of people in corporate have no context of the other, right? The entrepreneurship wilderness, I will call it that. And I love that you have both, you have interfaced with both, and you realize that, I think corporate is an amazing space with its challenges. I think it's really an amazing space to be impactful and empowering.
Yeah, and especially because of the number of people that you work with. So the connect part, the relationship part, I think is a big one. What's happening for me right now is when you see it play out and you see yourself playing out in the story, it's about the opportunity of how do I want to show up, because of the number of people that look to me for guidance and advice. Is I can lose myself in that process, because it's deadlines and we've got to be here. And my strategy that I use is my breathing. And I'm fortunate because I was blessed with an amazing coach. So I always have a coach. I think anybody that knows me, I will go through life and I'll always have coaches and surround myself with teachers, because I'm unconscious for most of the time. So I need someone else to mirror that back to me.
Yeah.
So that's a strategy, but breathing for me is a massive strategy. I've actually learned, I've experienced what we call coherence. If anybody's listening and you want to know what coherence is, go and check out, unrelated to Momentum Multiply, go and check out Heart Math. Amazing technology that teaches you how to develop coherence and how to develop that physical awareness of what's going on in your body. There's feedback tools, and that's actually what we have similar in our app. When you become aware of being incoherent, and you're able to relate that to how I'm showing up right now. Like, am I being vicious right now? What is going on with my breathing? And actually, is this a stressor that I'm trying to solve? So for me, breathing has become that easy go-to, like, how am I breathing? What's going on in my body? And how do I get back into that place of coherence? And it's extremely difficult to do that when the pace is too fast.
Yeah.
So I would say that right now in the corporate space, managing your pace and communicating that you need to slow your pace down is so important. And a way to physically notice when it's not a sustainable pace is in how you're breathing.
I love that.
And it's free.
I love that. That's so powerful. That's so powerful.
So the thing that I always advise people to do is, whenever you're making a choice about something to eat, what to eat, is to ask yourself, is it moving me towards or away from the person I want to be in the world? It's just a simple question. And all that does is help you pause in the moment and think, is it a reflex? Am I feeding a fear? Am I feeding a need? Or am I making a choice for the person I want to be in the world? Or am I going to just be the same person tomorrow? So it's just enough to pause and help you make the right choice.
I love the recurring theme of pace, and being able to consciously slow yourself down in order to make the right decision. Because I know I end up on the app because I am frantic most of the time. So I really love that. And another thing we didn't touch on is the woman's cycle in nutrition, which is a whole topic on its own.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We'll get there some point.
Regarding mindfulness, I think there's just so many different ways to approach it. So what I use in my work is a 5-minute relaxation experience, because that's actually what you want out of it. You want the ability to be able to relax. But I also give this example often because it's about using tools or experiences or practices that you are familiar with. Mindfulness doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So within my tradition and culture, it's actually lighting a lamp to your god and your goddess with conscious attention and focus and a prayer. Within Southern African traditions, it's lighting a candle to your ancestors. Again, a very conscious form of communication. Within the Catholic tradition, it's going to a church and lighting a candle and saying a prayer. And there's various iterations of this in our traditions and our cultures. So it's also about understanding the resources that you have from your family, from your community, from your culture. That's also mindfulness activity that potentially resonates more with you. And that is a very practical, effective technique that you can use.
I love that. I just remember last night I was thinking through how to slow down so that I can actually be able to sleep. And I ended up finding on Audible a whole someone reading of the Bible. And I just thought, I've been trying to do this, so let me listen in. And it was able to just calm me down. And I love that we already have a lot of the resources available to us and for free that we can just tap into and use. Ladies, this was so insightful for me. I am excited to get on the journey with some of the insights that you've shared. And some of them have affirmed, I think, already where I am and just made me feel like I think I'm on the right track. So thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and the work that you do. I can't wait for us to reconnect again. And I can't wait to hear how this was impactful for others as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.